Sometimes I think it all started that evening when the sun set especially slowly. As if it didn't want to go away, leaving us in the darkness, where it all happened. But honestly, it all started much earlier, on those quiet, almost cloudless days, when it seemed to me that friendship could endure anything. My name is Kelly. I was 16 then, and life seemed as straightforward as road markings on a highway, school, basketball practice, evenings with my friend Jessica, laughter, silly photos on my phone, and the certainty that only the best was yet to come. Jessica was my opposite. I am quiet, attentive, the one who always thinks before she speaks. She is a whirlwind, laughter, sunbeams in her hair, eternal ideas and impulsive decisions. We've been friends since childhood, and I'm used to being there, the person who holds her back when she's rushing too fast. But one day, I couldn't. And that's what changed everything. That evening, when I first came to her house after school, something immediately didn't appeal to me. Not the house. It was beautiful, well-kept, newly renovated, and smelled of coffee and expensive candles, but the atmosphere. As if the air was too thick, too controlled. Mom went into town, Jessica said, taking off her sneakers and tossing her backpack in the corner. Left me with him. Said he'd make sure I don't throw parties. As if I'm even inviting anyone, she snorted. By him, you mean with your stepfather? Yeah. With Jim. She said it too quickly. I didn't pay attention at the time, just nodded, and followed her into the living room. The shelves were lined with neat books and neatly framed photographs. But Jessica wasn't smiling in any of them. I didn't notice at the time, or maybe I didn't want to notice. Jim appeared in the kitchen, as if out of nowhere. Tall, reserved, with those cold eyes that don't smile when your face does. He said something like, so you brought a friend. So, girls, should we order pizza? And it seemed like a normal phrase, but her voice. The voice wasn't about pizza. We ate and laughed. He joked, told stories about his youth, about his work. I tried not to meet his eyes, but Jessica, on the contrary, as if on purpose, she'd top up his coke, then straighten his hair. I thought then, teenage coquetry, but there was something different in her gaze. Strange, unpleasant. When he left the room, I quietly said, it's like you're afraid of him. She turned around abruptly. No. It's just, he's too perfect. You know, the kind who always knows best. But you said he's normal, right? He's normal, she chuckled, looking somewhere at the floor. I just don't like it when people look at me like I'm a child. After that, she changed the subject. We turned on some music and started chatting about school, about boys. And everything became normal again, but just as I was about to leave, I turned to the window and saw Jim standing in the shadows of the hallway. Looking. Not at either of us. But at Jessica. That was the first time I felt a chill down my spine. The next weeks passed almost peacefully. We saw each other every day. She joked, she laughed, but something new had appeared in her, something unspoken. Sometimes she'd just fall silent in the middle of a conversation, as if her thoughts were elsewhere. And then, the smile again, like a mask. One day, at lunch, I asked, are you okay at home? She looked up. Why are you asking? I don't know. It's like you're not sleeping. It's fine, Kel. Mom's just always at work. He's kind of filling in for her now. Like, helping. I wanted to ask, helping with what? But at that moment she smiled so hard that I decided not to pry. I didn't know then that it was that day that she felt truly scared for the first time. One evening she texted, Kel, can you come over? Please. Just stay with me. I ran without thinking. When I entered the house, it was dark, only the light from the table lamp. Jessica was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. I came over and sat down next to her. She was silent, then whispered, he's angry that I didn't call him on my way home. Who? Jim? Yeah. He says I should be more responsible. But it's not like Dad says, you know? I nodded. She looked at me and added, sometimes I think he's waiting for Mom to leave. I didn't know what to say. I was a teenager, not a psychologist. I just wanted it all to be a misunderstanding. But even then, I sensed it wasn't. Later, I learned that fear has a smell. A mixture of cheap deodorant, coffee, and something metallic, like blood on your finger. That's how Jessica's house smelled when I went there after school. That's how her air smelled. And when she once said to me, if I suddenly disappear, you'll say you knew. Okay. I couldn't laugh. Sometimes changes don't happen overnight. They're like cracks in glass, barely noticeable at first, then they widen, until one day everything crumbles. That's exactly what happened to Jessica. At first, it was little things. She stopped wearing lipstick, even though she couldn't go to the store without gloss. Then, she started wearing long-sleeved sweaters, even when it was hot outside. She answered questions briefly. I'm just tired. It's nothing, Kel. Don't start, okay? But the strangest thing was that she almost stopped looking in the mirror. As if she were afraid to see herself. One day, I came to her unannounced. The door was ajar. A man's voice came from the kitchen, low, even, but with that intonation that makes you cringe, even if the words are spoken calmly. I just said you should be grateful, Jessica. I care about you. Then silence, a rustling sound. And her voice, trembling, almost childish, I know. I just forgot to call. I stood in the hallway, clutching the phone in my hand that I wanted to knock, to say, hey, I'm here. But I couldn't. I heard the sound of a hand, then a quiet cry. And I felt cold. So cold that I ran out of the house, numb as a sheet. She didn't text me that evening. The next day at school, still not a word. She sat in the last row, staring into space. During recess, I went up to her and simply hugged her. She shuddered, as if in pain, and then she pressed herself against me, as if clutching the edge of a precipice. He said I was ungrateful, she whispered. That Mom was already tired, and I was just making things worse. He has no right to say that to you. Kel, she looked me in the eye, and there was something terrifying in her gaze. He can do anything. A few days later, I decided to tell the school counselor everything, that I couldn't just sit and watch her fade away. But Jessica found out. She came to my house that same evening, shaking, her eyes red. Why did you do that? She screamed from the doorway. You don't understand. If he finds out, everything will be worse. But, Jess, no, Kel. You just made things worse. Now he'll think I'm slandering everyone, that I'm lying. She grabbed her backpack and left without even closing the door. And I stood there, feeling like I'd just betrayed the person I'd tried to save everything for. After that, she stopped talking to me. For about 2 weeks. She'd see me in the hallway and turn away. She'd sit alone, as if afraid someone would approach. And I'd almost resigned myself to it, until one day I got a message. Kel, if I tell you everything, will you still stay? I wrote, never. I came to her that night. She was sitting in her room, the light off. On the floor, a box of baby clothes. On the wall, the shadow of the window, like bars. He watches me, she said. Always. Even when Mom's not here, that he says I should learn to respect men, that I'm too much like her when she was young. She spoke quickly, haltingly, as if afraid she wouldn't have time to get everything out. He comes when I'm doing my homework. He sits next to me. Sometimes he just sits there, silent, sometimes. She closed her eyes, her lips trembling. Sometimes he touches my shoulder. He says it's kind. But I feel like he's not. My head was pounding, that I didn't know what to do, that I just wanted to grab her and take her anywhere, anywhere. He was a man who had been broken. That night we sat on the floor for a long time, hugging. She asked, if something happens to me, don't blame yourself. Just promise to tell the truth. I nodded. And then, as I was leaving, I noticed the reflection of a window in the mirror, and behind it, in the darkness, a figure. He was standing outside, smoking. Just looking at the house. I ran away. A week later, Jessica stopped going to school. Her mother said she was nervous exhaustion. But I knew it wasn't nerves. It was what a person looks like when they're slowly breaking down. I tried writing, calling, no answer. And then, on the 3rd week, I made up my mind that I went to their house again. Mom was at work. Jim opened the door. Kelly, he said in that same even voice, you know, Jessica is resting right now. She needs peace. I took a step forward. He blocked the way. I said, she needs peace. He looked me straight in the eyes. No anger. No threats, just calm, like a man certain the world was his. That was the first time I realized I couldn't win him over with words. The next day, Jessica returned to school. Pale, silent, with dark circles under her eyes. She came up to me during recess. He said he forgave me. Forgave, for what? For letting you interfere. And then she added in a whisper, but now he knows you're part of the problem. After that conversation with Jessica, I found it hard to breathe in my own house. I constantly caught myself listening, to hear if anyone was walking down the hallway, or if anyone was looking at me from the window across the street. Across the street was their house. And every evening, when the lights came on, I saw shadows moving in their living room. Sometimes Jessica would flicker behind the curtain. Sometimes it was just the silhouette of a man, tall, calm, always standing slightly to the side, like a director watching a scene. One night, I dreamed I was standing in their house. On the floor were photographs. All torn in half, but their faces remained whole. And in each one was Jessica. And next to him was him, Jim. But he had no eyes. Just dark voids that I woke up to the sound of a notification. My phone was blinking. A message from an unknown number: "You shouldn't interfere in things that don't concern you." I couldn't breathe. My fingers shook as I dialed. "Jess, is that you? What's going on?" A reply came a minute later: "Don't text me anymore. It's dangerous." From that day on, it was as if she disappeared. She sat at the other end of the room during class. She didn't talk to her friends. When I passed by, she lowered her eyes, and one day, she simply whispered, "He sees everything." I didn't understand who she meant. Jim? Or someone else? A week passed. The school was getting ready for the fall formal, but all I cared about was how to help Jess. That I wrote a letter. A paper one. Unsigned, no names. I put it in her locker. "You're not alone. If you need to leave, I'll help. Just tell me when." A day later, the answer was in my locker. A piece of notebook paper. Gray letters, written in pencil, as if with a trembling hand. "It's too late. He said we're a family now. And no one will dare separate us." I went to the school psychologist, Miss Lang. I told him everything as it happened. She listened for a long time, seriously, then said, "Kelly, I understand you're worried, but maybe it's just emotional stress. Jessica has been through a difficult time, she needs time." I wanted to scream. Time? She doesn't need time, she needs help. But Miss Lang simply nodded. "We'll contact her mother." And I knew, that's it. Now Jim will find out. That evening, someone knocked on my window. 3 times. Quietly, insistently. I walked up and froze. Jessica was standing outside. Barefoot, in a thin sweater, shivering from the cold. "He knows," she whispered. "He said everything is different now. That if I tell him even a word, he'll hurt you." "Me?" "He saw the way you looked at our house. He said girls like you should learn to keep their mouths shut." She burst into tears, pressing her face against the glass. "Cal, I can't take it anymore. I can't even sleep. He's standing at the door, listening to me breathe." I wanted to open the window, let her in, but she suddenly recoiled. She looked toward the road. There, in the darkness, someone stood by the lamppost. And a cigarette smoldered in his fingers. Him, that I had no doubt. After that night, I didn't see Jessie for a week. Her mother said the girl had gone to stay with relatives to recover. But I knew she hadn't left. That I saw the light in her window. And sometimes her silhouette. Sometimes his. A month passed. School had moved on. Everyone had forgotten. Except me. One evening, I was walking home from choir practice. That I passed their house. And suddenly I heard music. The piano. Jessica was playing "River Flows in You," the tune we'd learned together. I stopped. The light in her window flickered. And I saw her, in a white dress, her hair down, a smile, strange, too calm. And behind her stood he. His hand, on her shoulder. She turned to the window and looked straight at me. And smiled. But there was no Jessica in her gaze. Only emptiness. The next day, Miss Lang announced that Jessica had decided to transfer to another school. "A new chapter in her life," she said. And I just sat and stared at the empty desk next to me. But the story wasn't over. A month later, I received a letter. No return address, the same handwriting. Hers. "Cal, if you're reading this, it means I finally made my decision. He won't let me go. But if something happens to me, know this: I tried to get out. He's not a person, Cal. He's an emptiness. And now it's inside me." That night, I burned the letter. But the smell of smoke reminded me of that house. And I realized, fear doesn't go away when a person leaves. It simply moves on to the next person, to the one who decides to look further than necessary. The end of the story, or just the beginning, depends on what you believe.